Hello, and welcome to a little bit of a different video. As you can see, I have a assortment of my CJ mods here, and the kind of point of this video was I saw a person's comment on one of the latest spun videos that he has put together of the Top Truck Challenge, showing off all of our trucks, including my recent Top Truck Challenge version of this CJ2A, which I'll show later. But I wanted to kind of talk about this because what the person commented on was that just kind of like a fleeting kind of comment that my Jeep is just a slightly modified version of my crawler, which is true. Uh, well, it's heavily modified, but I know what they meant by that, and I wanted to kind of explain and kind of give a scale of things in my head, kind of give you a little bit of insight into the way I like to do things and the thought process throughout making these mods, and I figured maybe some people might be actually interested in this because it's something that I've always been really interested in. So essentially, what it is in each version of the CJ, it's an evolution of a single vehicle. So what I kind of try to do, or what I've really been focusing on and putting a lot of forethought into things as I build them, is as I was doing the next version, I was thinking of it as an evolution of a single vehicle, as if, alright, someone has this CJ2A, I want to make it more off-road capable. What do I do next? And that is how that kind of progression went, and that's why certain elements stay there and certain elements go away. So you kind of see here in the stock version, it's, well, a stock version, which I would like to get back to working on this and detailing it, and obviously updating the textures, because I've gotten a whole lot better since I made this mod, the original one, which I haven't released yet because I don't think it's ready. So I'd like to release that, so I want to work on it. And then the natural progression for me after that was I had talked to Spun about doing some Ultimate Adventure stuff, and I made me think of how someone would take this CJ original one and prepare it for an Ultimate Adventure. So I just changed the leaf springs from spring under to spring over, which is a common kind of modification and a simple suspension lift that someone would do as their kind of first progression into modifying a vehicle for off-road. Because most people don't go from a stock Jeep and then go, you know what, I want to go straight to this crawler. They kind of build their vehicle towards that, and that's kind of something I've kept in mind. So in that, I also would think that someone that had the stock version wanted to off-road it wants a little more power than the little 4-cylinder can put out, so I put the V8 in there. Unfortunately, I never put the V8 sounds because I could never get sounds I was quite happy with, so I never gave the V8 sounds to that. It wasn't too big of a drawback because the 4-cylinder sounds that I made for it from the actual Go Devil sound pretty good, and they kind of fit the vehicle still, so I wasn't too heartbroken that I didn't get V8 sounds. But along with the V8 swap, you have the roll cage because you want to be safe for when you flip over. Once you start getting into like off-roading, you realize the importance of a cage, and especially when you start to get into more serious off-roading. And then after that progression was the crawler version, which is what I would feel is the next progression after this version is, alright, I have this vehicle, it's got plenty of ground clearance, has good capabilities, but it doesn't flex a whole lot. It carries the wheel. It doesn't articulate as much as I would like. So I'll change it up and throw coils on there for better suspension articulation. And while I'm at it, the wheelbase for the CJ isn't quite perfect, so I'll stretch it a little bit so it has that longer wheelbase, which is a little better for off-roading, and improve it in such a way. And then, as some of you might have spotted in the top corner, we have the final progression of this mod, and this will probably, I'm almost certain this is going to be the last version other than the stock version that you'll see from me publishing. This is the Top Truck Challenge Jeep, and before I pull up for scale, I want to just go over a little bit. Now, from this point, it's alright, I want to build sky is the limit, crawler, end all. This is going to be the last thing I do with this vehicle, is I'm going to make it as good as it can possibly be, and then that'll be the end of it. So it has some new coilovers, much larger coilovers, has a nice 4-link setup. It has additional body armor to the standard body armor I had here of just rock rails and a standard little cage. I extended the cage a little bit. I added the kind of body protection panels here all along, and I like how that came out. The other thing I did was, when you get up to this kind of tire size, which are 54-inch tires, you're going to need a little more power than a nice tiny V8. So I stepped up to a larger V8, and also threw some new bumpers on there, some upgraded axles, which I also had on the crawler version, but a little beefier, and then added a winch to the rear along with a winch to the front, because who needs just one winch? And also removed the windshield frame, because man, does this thing look good as a crawler with no windshield frame. And then of course you'd want a snorkel for when if you're gonna be going in water, so I made the snorkel nice kind of hard PVC pipe kind of setup here, where it's got a hose clamp holding it on the old windshield frame, and then zip tied to the roll cage. I just love the way that came out and how it looks, and I just feel like this is kind of the way someone would kind of build through a vehicle and just modify this vehicle one step at a time, each step being more crazy and more intense of an upgrade. And I thought maybe I share that with people and they kind of get where some of my inspiration comes from. And just, I don't know, I'm a person who really likes to be very attention to detail oriented, so I try to think of the little things, like something no one will ever notice on the upgraded version of this CJ for like the Ultimate Adventure. The spring hangers for doing the spring over wouldn't line up perfectly the way they used to in a spring over application, because it's a different geometry. So what I did was I kind of thought of how someone would do it in real life, and I spun the spring hanger, or the spring bracket to the side, and then bent the U-bolts as if someone hit them with a hammer and bent them around to make it work, as if someone was doing this, just taking the stock one and then modifying it to make it work. I just like doing that kind of thing and thinking about these things and thinking about, alright, if I was in this situation, how would I do it? Kind of like another example is these rear shock locations, I kind of kept them relatively similar in location. It's slightly back on this version compared to this, but that's just because of the stretch wheelbase. But when I was angling them, because they're angled out slightly, I noticed it was clipping into the body. Now I could have redesigned it so it doesn't clip and have them run differently, but I thought of it as, well, I already have these axles set up, and I have this angle and everything's set up to be like this. What would I do in real life? I would just cut a hole in the body so it fits. So I cut a hole in the body so it fits. And then kind of the same thing with these tail lights. You see how they're mounted up high on this. That wasn't for stylistic change, that's because I cut out this massive slice of the back of the tub, so there's no room for the taillight. That section's no longer there, so I moved them up here because it's where I'd have to put them. So I hope you've kind of enjoyed this kind of insight into the crazy thing I call my brain. But I figured it would be cool to kind of let people into my inspiration, because this is something I always really like to look at in off-road vehicles, in particular my dad's Jeep. He bought with practically stock condition, and I love looking at the progression to the Jeep that he has now, and looking at all the stages of upgrades and everything. And that kind of is kind of shown in my modding and how I like to do things. It's a progression of, or evolution of a vehicle from its stock form to its ultimate form of as good as it can get. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I would like to, if you haven't seen Spun's promos for Top Truck Challenge, go check out Spun's YouTube channel, which will have a link in the description to one of the intros or promos for the Top Truck Challenge, which is going to be going on, which is where you'll see this beast in action. So thank you and have a nice day.